team.
Oh, look, John's also on Arrakis.
I'm Dan Carlson, 1/4 of the Lost Blokes. Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe, or we will feed you to Shai-Hulud. Hi, I'm Dave Nesbitt. Normally, I would be having a alcoholic beverage, but I had a reaction to my COVID booster, so I'm not tempting fate with that. So instead, I'm drinking all sorts of like allegedly healthy fluids like this and water. And then we have another guy here as well.
I'm John Kadolf. I am also one of the Lost Blokes. We are the Lost Blokes.
And we have a fourth bloke who's been lost for a bit, but hopefully they'll be returning soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have some different little pieces of content which includes them, and we'll be posting that at various times so that their presence is felt while they are, less able to film at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was a really long explanation.
I'm an Iraqian politician.
Yeah.
I'm John Kadolf. I'm one of the Lost Blokes. Go Lost Blokes.
Go Blokes. Go bloke yourself. And fuck Joe Rogan too.
Yeah. Hey, Joe Rogan, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
When you're done, fuck you, fuck your mom, fuck your mom's mom.
He's like the most popular host of anything anywhere ever.
I don't understand that.
I don't either.
Me neither. But to each their own. Look, there's plenty of elements of the culture that I sit there and go, don't get it, don't want to get it.
That's why we're the counterculture.
Yeah.
Because the culture sucks.
Dune Part 1 is the latest cinematic incarnation of Dune, a very lengthy novel by Frank Herbert, which requires you to look at a glossary every 3 words to find out what the hell is going on. Most of the names are unpronounceable, and I could never keep track of any of it. Along comes this movie, and I know exactly what's going on throughout the entire movie, more or less. So we have Paul Atreides, who is kind of like Michael from Phantasm, and Anakin Skywalker from the Star Wars prequels, who has been chosen to lead.
I'm going to smack you right in the face.
To lead his people he's a messiah of sorts, and he's a reluctant messiah, and he's got a bunch of people counting on him, a bunch of people fighting him. He ends up kind of wandering the desert, trying not to get eaten by sandworms. There's these giant desert worms, and keeps dreaming of this pretty girl, a Fremen girl, who is fighting for liberation for the planet Arrakis from the evil Harkonians, and and he hooks up with a bunch of them, and then he has a couple of fights. Not hook up in the OnlyFans sense.
I was gonna say
hook up as in like get the band back together sense. So there's a scene where he has to stick his hand in a box like Michael in Phantasm. And we know that the novel came out first, but I don't care. I still think that's a Phantasm scene. And then we have we have an updated version of the fight from the '84 film with the weird shields around their body when they fight. That was pretty cool. And then there's giant worms. There's giant worms all over the place, like way more than in Tremors.
The gentleman from Wisconsin, yield. Your time has expired.
Yes.
How much time did I go over?
10 seconds or 20.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good.
That'll go to the gentleman from Nebraska.
How do I by and large, you missed a lot. But yeah, I mean, Dune as a piece, both in this film and also as a novel, is so chock full of stuff. But basically, hello, it's the hero's journey. The hero starts at the beginning of all of this as a young man being trained by people who are greater than him. Because let's face it, in this film, we have Gurney Halleck and Duncan Idaho, and finally Duncan Idaho gets the representation in the plot of the film that he deserves. Also, this film has bagpipes for the Atreides, so of course it was a win. Dune is basically the hero's journey. It's also a story of, and it's the original book was written after Frank Herbert went to go see Lawrence of Arabia with Robert and Virginia Heinlein, and they all agreed that science fiction had yet to, up until that point, because it was the early 60s, have a massive sort of story of that sort told. And Herbert sat down and went to work on it.
But Lord of the Rings was already out, and that was pretty huge.
But yeah, it's also, but that's more high fantasy than science fiction. And I understand the fact that Dune is not even remotely hard science fiction, but you get the idea. He did an incredible job of like world building and all of this.
I will say that it's more interesting than Lawrence of Arabia, which I found incredibly boring.
So, but it's also about the impact of colonization. It's about ecology. It's, you know, the idea from the very outset, from literally the first scene, you see the Fremen fighting against the colonizers, who at that point in time are the Harkonnen, and they're kind of looking at House Atreides like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. And the Atreides are like, we're trying to not be those people.
I do like it. It really came through in this version. It was always sort of there, but it was always muddled with all of this stuff that I didn't really attach to. What this very obvious criticism of American foreign policy, especially with relation to oil accumulation, and obviously the spice in the story is a stand-in for oil in our world.
I mean that it's such an obvious comparison to make, because it's what allows travel to happen between all the various spots of the universe. The Empire would basically end if the spice doesn't flow. And also at the same time, it's a very potent psychoactive agent, which we get into a bit with Paul and his visions. Because, you know, like literally they're trying to escape a sandworm eating him. And then now all of a sudden Paul is tripping balls because he got exposed to.
It's like if somebody started huffing oil.
Yeah. I don't recommend either of these things.
No, these are not recommended. I said it would be like that. I did not say that you should try.
Are you suggesting that huffing oil, it has psychoactive properties?
I don't know, but there's a movie called Love Liza where Philip Seymour Hoffman, instead of becoming a normal addicted to a normal drug, becomes addicted to huffing gas fumes. Yeah, I am suggesting that this movie wants to mix its metaphors quite strangely, because he's basically taking their fuel as a psychoactive substance.
So, so what do you guys think? I've always thought that the spice are veins of worm poop, but then somebody said, no, it's the veins of spice are dead worms.
There's actually a literal explanation of what the spice is that came out in the Dune universe. And basically the idea is that there are creatures that are kind of like the larval stage of sandworms, and effectively it's their poop.
Well, that would make sense that would be psychoactive.
Yeah. But but then again, if you think about it, okay, so let me get this straight. Dead dinosaur juice is the thing that you use to power your vehicles, lubricate the interior of them, and make plastic. Right. Okay, whatever works for you. But that's the way it works. The world's a funny place.
Great casting this time around.
Oh my God, yeah. Literally across the board. Everybody in it is just awesome. Okay, first of all, I think that Oscar Isaac's beard should be nominated for an Academy Award, because it's kind of amazing. Oscar Isaac's as well, but his beard should actually get its own. Yeah. And then Josh Brolin
Best
is
supporting beard.
Yeah. Josh Brolin as Gurney Halleck, I thought was absolutely amazing. Considering he had to follow Patrick Stewart, that I'm sitting there going, no, you actually made a better Gurney Halleck. Actually, says quite a bit.
Although if you're going to follow Patrick Stewart, you should follow him in Dune.
True that.
Because it's not his best moments.
It's not, yeah.
Stellan Skarsgård.
Yes, as Baron Harkonnen, who I thought was absolutely great.
Yeah.
Also, the woman who plays the Reverend Mother, Helen Gaius Mohaim, who does the thing with the box and such, is played by Charlotte Rampling, who's one of my favorite English actresses and was in one of my favorite really dark as fuck movies.
Angel Heart.
No.
Oh.
No, she might have been in Angel Heart. I've not.
She was. She had her heart ripped out in Angel Heart.
I'll have to take a look for that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Angel Heart. Now it's not coming to me. Charlotte Rampling was in The Night Porter, which is a way darker film than even Angel Heart.
Yes. If any movie can make Angel Heart look like a family film, it's The Night Porter.
Holy shit! Yeah.
So an observation that I made, and I want to preface this by saying that my explanation is NSFW.
NSFW.
Yeah. That's one box you don't want to stick your dick into.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, it's going to be one of those days.
What's in the big pink box?
Pain is in the big pink box.
Do you think that was a metaphor
in this movie, or in the metaphor?
What's in the box? Pain.
I don't know. Well, it's in Phantasm as well.
It's kind of like she's warning him about getting involved with the Fremen girl.
Oh, I didn't make that connection. I just thought it was about the test of the, I think it's Bene Gesserit's.
Bene
Gesserit's is that's a test that's reserved for people who go to like the highest, from what I understand from the movie, go to the highest levels of trust in that organization. And that's something that if you fail it, you're going to die. It sounds like. So
well, basically, the Bene Gesserit are trying to separate out the sort of person who is, as they feel, genuinely human, as opposed to someone who is more ruled by their base instincts.
So is it
and that's what the test is for.
Is it a Voight-Kampff test in a lot of ways?
In some respects, yeah. Basically, the entire concept of that test is, I'm going to put you under a great deal of strain, and if you try to escape it, I'll fucking kill you.
Wow.
The idea is that you sit there and deal with the pain and the stress of what it is that you're dealing with. So that way, if the opportunity presents itself, you can basically invert that pain on somebody else.
So the fear in Dune is the mind killer, but the fear in Phantasm is the realization that the fear is an illusion. So there's a little bit of a different thing there going on.
And in Star Wars, fear leads to anger.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, I'm not just referencing everything that has fear in it. I'm talking about Phantasm because it has the box test that's in this movie. And in Phantasm, the lesson that he is supposed to learn from that is that the fear isn't even real, that he should just calm down. But here it's you got to live through it, and you can turn it on your enemies.
Yeah, fear is a thing to be overcome. Fear is not a thing to basically allow to take over your life. And I mean, I think it's an actually well done concept within the film. I think that it's something about, it's driving everybody in House Atreides, because they all know they're being led into a trap. They just don't know how the trap is going to play itself out.
And that's what I liked about this movie that I didn't, and I do like the Lynch movie, but it's very muddled, I think. But
yeah, let's just say there was a lot of producer input on that film.
Yeah, is that Dino De Laurentiis? Well, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I love about this movie is everything's laid out one thing at a time, so that your brain can totally grasp what's going on at any moment. There's not just this. You're not just. I'm always happy to be dumped in the middle of a narrative and have to figure things out. But when it's this complicated, you can't really do that.
Yeah,
and I'm glad that he laid everything out. So I was happy with that.
I didn't have any problem with the Lynch version. I got it.
Not even the worm thing at the beginning, and all the terminology just threw me for a loop. The Bene Gesserits, all that stuff. Yeah, and the
Okay,
Jesuits.
John, if you make that noise again, I will literally reach you the screen and smack the taste out of your mouth.
What did y'all think of the worm scenes? Man,
I thought
epic.
the worm scenes were remarkably done. Especially, I have to say, they give a brief hint when Kynes is running away to escape, but then they show the worm scene at the very end that tells you what's coming in the next film, and you're like, yes.
I love it's kind of like, I mean, whenever I compare this to other things, I know this came before them. So I'm just kind of giving a anchor. I'm not really saying Tremors took, but it really reminds me of Tremors because they can't even make a tiny noise on the ground without these worms tracking them down. And I love the fact that they had those thumpers,
Yes.
which would create noise to distract the worm so they could run away and stuff like that. I thought it was interesting.
And then later on, you'll find out a few other things about the thumpers and such if you've not.
Oh, I have not. I had all 4 books. My mom got them for me for Christmas one year, and I was super excited to delve into them because everybody said this is where Star Wars was born, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then I started reading it, and I'm just like, I got to consult the glossary every 30 seconds. Every time a name comes up, I can't do this.
Bitch, learn what context is.
I can't. Then. Well, I was 12 at the time, so.
Oh, okay. Jesus, when I was 12, I broke down and I read Clockwork Orange. You talk about a book where you need to read the fucking glossary.
Yeah. Trainspotting is, if you think watching Trainspotting is, like hard to keep up with all the slang, try reading the book.
Yeah.
There's not, they don't even make attempts at like using the real words for things. They figure the accent into every word, and it's just, it's not easily digestible to me anyway. I don't know.
To me, I think that's one of the reasons that I fell very much in love with the world of Dune is that Frank Herbert spent so much time creating this universe that really has a lot of richness and depth to it and elements of its own language and a history. I mean, like you can go onto YouTube and there's a ton of stuff on the prehistory of Dune that is absolutely amazing to watch.
Is it true that the first book of Dune was comprised of like a bunch of short stories that he did, and that the second novel, Dune Messiah, is the first one that he sat down with the intention of making a novel?
No,
because that's what I think I heard.
Not that I'm aware of. The first book of Dune was meant to be an actual novel front to back. Oh. And but it was also it might have been written, it's obviously written in sections. It has that classic, you can see it really easily, the function of the 3-act structure in terms of how the story is done. And it actually works out because now there's probably going to be a trilogy of films if they do this one right.
Well, it sounds like the second one has been greenlit, and Villeneuve is already talking about wanting to do the third one. So the second one will be part 2 of the first book, and the third one would be Dune Messiah. So if he wants to do the entire series, he'd have to do minimum 5 movies total, I think. Because God Emperor of Dune is the last official Frank Herbert Dune book, isn't it?
Yeah. There was a couple of other ones after that. His son took over along with Kevin Anderson after Frank Herbert died and is now writing the prequel novels to it. I mean, they're doing a great job of telling the story, but in terms of the actual like function of writing, they're no Frank Herbert.
I really like the spiritual exploration aspect that Paul is going through. Of course, this was supposed to be a coming of age story as well. And in Frank Herbert's, they had somebody much older than what was supposed to be the case playing.
Oh, you mean in Lynch's movie?
Lynch's, yeah.
Yeah.
What did I say?
You said Frank Herbert's.
Yeah.
Oh, I meant Lynch. So they got somebody to play Paul that was younger, and so you get that feel of a coming of age kind of story, very akin to the Luke Skywalker kind of thing, where he's just coming off the farm and being thrown into this huge world. It's the same kind of situation. Paul's been sitting around listening to his father, doing the politics thing for his whole life, and is just coming into what he thought was supposed to be his place, in learning the politics, learning the the diplomacy, and learning how to run the empire after his dad passes. And he realizes that it's all a sham, and that even though his father has good intention, it's going to end up in likely a very bad place for the indigenous people. And so he immediately, once he starts getting a little bit of a taste of the spice, starts to be able to realize the spiritual aspect of this planet and how important it is, not only for interstellar travel, but just to the balance of the galaxy. And the people are just as much part of that as the worms and the spice. Once he's having these visions of her, he starts to realize that something is wrong, and he starts realizing that the Bene Gesserit teachings have a veiled evil behind them.
When you're dealing with life, you have to be very conscious of the fact that everybody has an agenda around you, and it may or may not match up with your own. And Paul, realizing that literally everybody around him has their own agendas, including his father and his mother and the empire and everything else, and all of them are pointing at him. And I'm kind of, I should wait for John to come back on this one, but I'm gonna before I forget, I'm gonna throw it out there.
Yep.
Talking about how Paul's been sitting around studying the politics and such, but there's a key element that kind of gets missed, and was something that I really liked about this film. And that is, he's been sitting around also being trained by two of the best weapon masters like in the universe. And so, especially at the very, very end of the film, when there's a fight scene and everybody's expecting Paul to get killed, and Paul makes real short work of the guy, to the point where literally the leader of the tribe is going, "Why is he toying with him?" And then you realize that Paul has spent all of this time being trained by people who are absolute masters of their craft. And he just has to get over the idea that this is the first time he's ever been in a fight where he's legitimately had to kill somebody.
But yeah, Paul isn't toying with him. Paul is trying not to murder him.
Yeah.
There's in the last issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, before they introduced a new character as Spider-Man, Peter Parker dies, and one of his enemies starts fighting. One of his enemies now has Spider-Man's powers, and he realizes once he starts using those powers, that every time he had dealt with Spider-Man before, Spider-Man was holding back. Like, Spider-Man could have killed him at any moment, and he's not a murderer, so he always held back a little bit. And that I thought of that as soon as, like, this guy thinks this guy thinks that he's toying with him, but he's not. He's trying to spare his life. But the guy's not going to give him that choice because culturally they're not allowed to, I guess. But.
Yeah, the idea of that particular duel is that death is the test of it, to see if you're going to be worthy to join their tribe. And you think about it, the Fremen live in one of the most hostile environments you can imagine, surrounded by colonizers who would like nothing more than to enslave or kill them. The Fremen are nobody to fuck with.
Right.
As the other major force in there, the Sardaukar, find out, because the Sardaukar make the mistake of tripping across some Fremen and thinking this will be an easy fight, and then they all die. They die a lot.
He knows that the Bene Gesserit are manipulators, and they have their agenda that they will manipulate whoever they can, using the voice or not, will manipulate whoever they can to further their own agenda.
Did everybody like the scene where I think Paul and that Fremen girl are hostages, and they are trying to get out of that ship, the hummingbird ship or whatever it is, and they're using the voice?
It's him and his mom. That scene is absolutely great, and I love it. It says a lot about what he's learning. Also, how it is. The other thing that I liked is that it's a key element in the books that every particular group has their own battle language, both verbal and as hand gesture. That winds up becoming a key plot point during that particular scene. There's a lot of, and the thing I like about at its very core, a lot of the reason that I like this film is because it's way closer to an adaptation of the book than the Lynch film was.
I felt I haven't read, like I said, I couldn't read the book all the way through at 12 years old. Maybe I should revisit it, but I felt as I watched it that that the director and I think he wrote the script as well, had a better grasp of what the novel was about and trying to say. And obviously he didn't have Dino De Laurentiis hovering over his back either. So
yeah, I think that one of the things that it has finally begun to happen in Hollywood, and it makes me happy, is that Hollywood's now beginning to actually have respect for the source material and the fandom of the source material. Because a lot of the reason that the David Lynch Dune tanked as it did was that the Dune fandom pretty much en masse went, nice try, but no.
Well, he also tried to cram probably I don't remember how many pages that novel is, but it's pretty dense, and he tried to cram it all into one quick movie, and it really feels like it needs to be at least 2 movies.
I think that's one of the problems with studios, especially Warner Brothers, that they're unwilling or too squeamish to pull the trigger on something that,
Well, wait a minute, isn't this Warner Brothers?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They didn't even have the second half green lit until after a week of the film being out.
Yeah.
Having said that, I mean, I get what you're saying, but they did just come off of Villeneuve's previous movie, which I consider a masterpiece, one of the best movies of the last decade, Blade Runner 2049, but it bombed terribly. So
I think that's I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, using the word bombed is a bit a bit exaggerated, because Hollywood uses the word bombed when it doesn't double its money back.
True.
So Blade Runner 2049 made its budget back and made a whole lot of money after that, but it wasn't double the budget initially. So Warner Brothers,
it didn't make the money back in 4 hours.
Warner Brothers put a big old band-aid on its pussy and decided to be skeptical about it. Yeah, I think so too. I'm not faulting the movie at all. I think it's great, but we could have gotten another hour out of it. And hopefully the
I think it would have been too long at another hour, to be honest. I was happy with where we were at.
See, I think one of the reasons that I feel this way is that when I was writing Dungeons and Dragons scenarios and modules and games and stories, is that I would spend a lot of time with the players and their characters doing those kind of things. They would spend the time with their skill training and their diplomacy, and there were whole sessions where there was a fight to be had.
I think John would be very happy with what Jodorowsky had originally intended, because he wanted to make a 12-hour movie.
Would have been fine with that.
Yeah,
but I think that Jodorowsky was existed during a period of time where, I mean, he had done some fairly long films as it was, but I think he saw the need for a thing to be one particularly long, one piece that somebody could sit there and digest as a singular item. And also, Jodorowsky is, for lack of any other way of putting it, a complete and utter brilliant genius, but a complete and utter lunatic in some.
He's a nutter in every sense of the word.
And I love his work, but and also at that point in time in the 70s, there was no concept of doing a trilogy of films that actually had an overlying mega plot. Like, you had the James Bond series, but there wasn't a meta plot that went all the way through it.
It was just a recurring character.
Yeah. The idea of sitting down and trying to sell, okay, I'm going to walk into Warner Brothers in 1974 and say, all right, I've got this idea for doing Dune. Okay, cool. It's an IP. Got a lot of money in it. We can do this. All right. First of all, it's going to need to be 3 movies to do it properly. And they would go, that's nice. Security will show you to the door.
Yeah.
Because at that point, the idea of doing 3 films concurrently was just absurd.
But we owe a lot of thanks to him for even trying, because if
Yeah.
he hadn't, we wouldn't today have Alien. We wouldn't have a lot of the other things that grew out of that failed production.
Oh yeah, all I mean, Star Wars, Alien.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of things that came together as a result of that, and I think he had a great team. But also, watching Jodorowsky's Dune, the actual documentary, which I thought was a great doc,
is.
But again, like Jodorowsky was rewriting the story of Dune, and I think the fandom probably would have lost their shit.
They would have crucified him.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love the idea of what he was going for, but I don't think he understood the fact that when you're dealing with something that is that loved by such a big fandom, you have to remain faithful to it. And I think that Jodorowsky's actual film, if he had done it or as a trilogy of films, would have probably got massacred by the Dune fan base.
Although the Jodorowsky fan base would have been okay with it.
Oh yeah, they've been okay with it. Yeah. You know, I don't know. This version of Dune for me, first of all, it's a total press play. I'm looking forward to the next one. Works for it's that very rare film. This one is probably going to wind up being my film of the year. That's nice, Dan. This film is going to be my film of the year. Mostly because they took something and made it. They took something and did an absolutely amazing job of being very faithful to it. And also, it's that very rare film that for me runs on all cylinders. It works just fine. There's not a point in there where I thought, wow, that was weak. Like the entire way through, I was like, okay, we got ourselves a winner.
Yeah, I was smiling like while watching the film. It's one of those things where, you know, a lot of times when you're sitting watching a film, you just kind of
passive.
But I was actively smiling while watching this movie. I was very pleased with it. I mean, I was just worried that it wasn't going to get greenlit or it wasn't going to be well received by the public, and we were going to have half of a fucking story, you know. And so I was very resentful of Warner Brothers toying with me like that.
Warner Brothers is sitting around going, it was a, you know, massive financial investment to do Dune in the first place, to do the first film. And if it had tanked at that point, you're like, well, okay, why throw good money after bad? But the fact that it turned out to be a good film that thankfully was well received. And it's an unfortunate side effect that there are a lot of really, really good films out there. Blade Runner 2049 being an example, that didn't find their audience until after the point where the people who make the money decisions were no longer interested in it.
My feeling is Villeneuve kind of was intentionally playing this game with audiences a little bit. He said, here's your first half. If you want the second half, you got to make some noise. So he actually said,
clap if you believe.
Yeah. So, and
I think what it boils down to is the maturity of the audience. I think what we're seeing right now is that audiences are not emotionally mature enough to accept or grasp the scope of things like Blade Runner 2049, because they're just not willing to invest enough of their thought processes. You know, they're sitting there wondering what they're missing on TikTok while they're watching the movie, and so they're not willing to invest enough of their intellect to really grasp a film.
Having said that, I think that there's a Blade Runner series planned, and like a TV series, and I think that Dune obviously has found its audience. It was actually in profit before it even showed in the United States. So I'm optimistic. I think Warner Brothers has taken some risks. I mean, The Shining was not it's a popular film now, but you can easily forget that it bombed too. And then they came out with Dr. Sleep. They've greenlit a lot of movies that you may have been sheepish about if you looked at box office. Dr. Sleep, Dune, Blade Runner 2049.
It has that same
Space Jam was a hit.
It has. There's a great comment that there's a great comment that Elvis Costello said regarding the American record industry and punk rock, where he said it really took him about 15 years to get over the absolute shock of this whole thing that came over from the UK and then blew up and then completely fell apart. And then they wouldn't sign anything that was punk. And, American film studios are like, we have to let, like the idea that David Lynch's Dune tanked, or the idea that Blade Runner, while everybody now reveres it when it first came out, did not do that well money wise. And it took them about 30 years to go, okay, it's still a functional IP that now has a much bigger audience than it did the first time. Let's throw some money at it and see what happens.